This is basic rendering with Rhino5. So if you are continuing your education in architecture, next semester we will actually be using Rhino 6, and we will have a different way of rendering, but this is actually a great introduction. So the first thing to sort of talk about is like, what is an architectural rendering? So if you go to, let's see, the interwebs, oh goodness, so much interweb stuff. Oh goodness. Architecture rendering. Images. So they range from something like this, which in my humble opinion is pretty realistic, to something more artistic. Like, let's say this, this person is trying to blend from a drawing, like the Make 2D drawing, to something that's kind of realistic. This also stems from hand-rendered architecture. So prior to computers, people would do typically like watercolors. I knew like one architect that just did this. This is not that. I think this is probably a computer still, but this is what it would look like. Oh, thank you. No, thank you. It would look about like this. And so people specialized in this. So this is, when you all reviewed the Beaux-Arts classicism, when they were in school, they would have never done a drawing like this. So this is sort of like a more modern interpretation. And now with computers, we have moved that into another kind of workflow. There's like a whole range of visualization styles that come with rendering. And since this is sort of like an introduction to this, the further you go along in your career here, the more advanced your visualization techniques will get. But this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to that. There's like a whole school of thought that comes with how you represent architecture visually. Sometimes it's a waste of time, but like clients really respond to it, so it's kind of something you should like pay attention to. This one, classic. Okay, so what we're gonna do is a simple version of a rendering. I did this tutorial yesterday. Wasn't my best work, so let's see if I can make it nicer today. So the first thing you're gonna do is I just modeled this. It's like a thing with columns and a roof. I'm pretending this is a fancy WeWork and that these are like little individual offices. And this is the site context. This is, let's say, the block, the curb, and then this is the road. And so I just modeled this, loving it, feeling it. Uh-oh, this is too far away. So if you don't have some of these elements, you could consider including them. For example, all the ADU students, you have site context. It does not have to be fancy, but you should consider contextualizing the yard, right? These are things that really help when it comes to the rendering phase. So the first thing, similar to Make 2D, whatever view you're in, is where you're going to render. So if I was in this view, if I was clicked on the front view, it would render that. And the rendering button is this blue ball. Typically, all your tools will live over on a different tab though. So you haven't probably had experience with these tabs. Again, it's just like so many commands. It's hard to sort of grasp the way that this is all formatted. But render tools changes all of this, and then all of this, like, I don't know, front view, side view. I don't know if these buttons were really ever necessary, but here they are. What you do need to probably notice is the sun panel. So we're gonna turn the sun on. So if you click on the sun, you can turn the sun on and scroll down and see where your project is situated. Since we are not in Africa, we're going to change the city here. So you can actually just scroll down to, it's like really weirdly, oh, right. It's like USA is kind of chunked together. Des Moines, boring. It's so weird. I just had, I was very good at finding it yesterday on the list, but you can just type Los Angeles right there, and that's where it will now be like, oh, we're going to provide lighting that's for that area. So we're not done yet. You even get to pick like the year. So I just kicked it to now. The date. So you could change this. And then the lighting. If you want to see how this is going down in your rendering, like a little preview, this is when render mode pops into importance. So this, you know, some of you have already been working on rendered, and that's cool. That, I think it was mostly for this sort of tool though, because now I can turn to rendered and I can see, ooh, amazing. It's very exciting. So you can pick some time that your shadows are looking good or whatever. If there's like specific times during the day. Again, this is like when some of the solar studies comes into effect, because let's say I've designed this strange oculus in the center, like the Pantheon. Is that going to like make it insanely hot in this WeWork cubicle that I designed? Probs. So this is just another visualization tool for that. So let's say this is good for me. The last step you do after that is you turn your skylight on. And now you are ready to go. After you've adjusted your sun and your lighting, you can come over and address materials. So I am not sure how all of your rhinos are set up. On the computer I was using in the lab yesterday, I wasn't immediately navigating to this render content. So there is, under like Rhino5, localization, English, US, render content, there is some materials. There is transparent, glass. You hit open. And this little ball will preview what that material looks like. If you do not have this, it doesn't really matter. Like, this glass thing did not take a lot of time to build. So let's go down to just glass, and I'll show you how to build a material. When you click on this white ball under material, this pops up. Up here is the preview of that default material. What color is glass? No. So it's clear, but usually it's like a little tint. Like, if it's clear, it's fine. Yeah, you know, you're not gonna see it, but you do see glass, right? So I add a little touch of blue, just a little bit. So usually I make it something like that. Beautiful. Okay. But, you know, this is still not glass, so you can then go and affect the transparency. Again, it doesn't really help if you make it completely transparent, but like pretty transparent, and you'll get the idea. Again, this is a visualization. It's a representation of what people think architecture is. So it's not exactly architecture. It's a lie in some sorts. It's the story, it's a storytelling mechanism. So it might, this is like where you as a human being become very important. You have to like look at architecture, look at your drawing, and see if they're communicating in the same way. This doesn't happen overnight, but that's why there is no realism in this. I added some gloss. I don't know. That's what glossiness does. Probably reflectivity is more appropriate. Maybe it's reflective. I have no idea. But let's say this is correct, and I hit OK. Now, all the things on the glass layer will render as glass. So let's just hit this render button and see what happens. So yeah, these I had designated as glass, and now they're glass. It's kind of hard to see, but let's carry on. I'm gonna make the context gray. I'm gonna make my columns light gray. I'm gonna make my, well, I did the roof, I think, whatever. Columns also light gray. Gray. Okay. The block is gonna be dark gray as well. Maybe like slightly darker. And then the road will be black. Render. This is where things take time. I mean, I still think it will take, oh, it has a countdown here, 23% complete, 1 minute remaining. Okay. What? Something I made up before class. It's beautiful. so architectural. So this is your basic to Rhino. There is this sort of post-effect exposure game you can play over here. If you click this, it makes it like a different kind of exposure. What does that reference? Anyone know? Huh? Yeah, it's photography reference of how long your film would be exposed to light. The longer something is exposed, the lighter it is. So that's what it's referencing. All of these things reference cameras in a way. So if you wanted to futz with this, go ahead. I mean, I don't see this helping me much, but anyways. So this is great. There's some adjustments that you all will have to make. So head over to render settings, which is the blue ball with a hand on it. And then one thing that's super important to always adjust is your resolution. So 640 by 480, which is whatever this default was, is like abysmally low. 1600 by 1200 was the benchmark when I was in grad school. So that's just what we used as a minimum. The reason you use this is because you will print it, and that is a pretty good size for something that will print. DPI right now is set to 72. DPI means dots per inch, and it's actually a reference to printing very specifically. So sometimes people will be like, oh, we'll make this 300. So that's really aggressive. Most of your standard printers will only ever print at 150 DPI resolution anyways. So 16 by 1200, this is for your final stuff with 150 DPI. That's a pretty good place to be. You can adjust the environment. I have no environment right now. Let me see if it automatically navigates me to that. This one says I can import a Rhino sky. Let's see. All right, that's a scary sky, but okay. The reason you might want to do a sky is if you have glass. When you look at a building and the sky is blue and there's clouds, that is reflected in your glass. This will take up more time, but whatever. The standard practice for this was that you would click render and then go to bed and wake up and hope it was finished. Yes. This one's taking 5 minutes, and it's not complicated. So this is the time you go and you grab like coffee or something. There are like cloud services where you would send this up into the cloud and it would process it. We may have that service soon, but we don't yet. So this is standard. There are entire architecture firms that hire one person that just sits around and renders the stuff. And they just keep on adjusting things and then hitting render and waiting 40 minutes for new stuff to pop out. This is not the game I tend to play. I've never had the time to do this ever in my life. And so I typically do something that's about 15 maybe minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, and then I Photoshop it until it's wonderful. And so you all can keep working for like the next 10 minutes and we will restart this when it's done. Okay, so this rendering's done. I think this sky is a little is like scary. Scary sky. What is that? Come on, really? I mean, that's slightly better, but not really. You know what I mean? So maybe I would redo this and eliminate the sky. It's kind of not. It's spooky. Spooky sky. Okay, so let's say though this is meeting all my expectations and fantasies for a rendering. I can hit save. You can save it as a range of things. I'm going to save it as a PNG, and hopefully this works to my advantage. And then I'm going to go into Precious Photoshop. Okay. Okay. File open. Okay, here we go. So there's a couple tools that you should get used to for selecting things. So the first thing I'm going to do is delete my spooky sky. I think it's garbage. You can do that by, the first thing I typically do is I go over here to my layer tab. If this tab doesn't pop up, you can get it from Windows Layers. And I duplicate this. And then I just turn it off. So it's like my backup archive. Some of these tools over here are for what they call a lasso or a marquee. So you already have experience with marquees, right? Because you marquee in Rhino. So this is a similar thing. It helps you select things. They have also, if you like hover over this and then right click, you can pick polygonal lasso tool, which I find very useful. Also, I will preface that I have been photoshopping since 1998, so you know there might be more advanced ways to do things, but I've been doing it for over 20 years in a certain way, so if you know a different way, go for it. Photoshop is a really old tool, similar to Rhino, lots of stuff in there. Yeah, it came for free on my IBM computer. I think it was like Photoshop 2 or something. So you can use this polygonal lasso tool and you can just go around clicking like you were tracing in Rhino. And then you can delete the crappy sky. To deselect, you can just hit Control D, or probably escape. Well, whatever. Right click. So Control D is deselect. All of these tools live somewhere up here as well. So if you're more comfortable with drop downs, that's also fine. So let's say, first thing I want to do is put a cool sky in. So you go to the interwebs and you Google sky, photos, whatever, images. Okay, so which sky do you think is the best? What? For here, from this. Do you think this one's good? This one's good. This one's good. So typically you'll see, sometimes clouds are distracting. The Windows XP, for example. Sometimes like clouds are distracting. I'm gonna grab this just to show you the difference. Copy image and paste. How do you think you move this behind the building? So you just drag your layer underneath that. It's trying to snap, so that's awesome. When you want to scale something, you just do Control T and make sure you're on the right layer. So Control T, and now I can adjust the scale of something. Super blue sky. So you'll see that, you know, that's what it would look like with lots of clouds. That's cool, whatever. Here's another advanced sort of tip. Let's say I want to see more sky. You can edit your canvas. So if you go into edit, image canvas size, you can actually make it taller, say 10, hit OK, and now you can see more of the sky. Ooh, so fancy. So all the time I will think that I have the best sky picked out for my project, and then I will put it with the building and it looks like trash. This doesn't look so bad. I am not so appalled by this, but this is something that you will like probably go through. So this process of Photoshop is called, well, I refer to it as populating. So what else do you think we can populate into this rendering? What? Well, okay, other things? People. Yeah, people's probably, between plants and people, those are your first. Dogs, good, very good. Cats, maybe. These are all good things. People, though, is like sort of the go-to because, as I've probably mentioned in the past, people give projects scale. So let's find some people. So the best way to do that is to go back to the interwebs and Google things like woman, white background. If you you want it to be like a full length, you could even put that. So there's like a whole industry for this, so please don't pick things that have watermarks on them. What's a watermark? Yeah, look at this. You got that right there. You can just copy it again, go back to Photoshop. Typically, I start a new file for this because I end up saving them in a big old people library, but you can now sort of go to, there's like, again, how can you select this? How could you cut her out? Yeah, you could select the white. So you can, there's another tool over here called the magic wand. So again, if you hold down on, I guess it was previously called a quick selection tool, the magic wand, and you go poof. So it selected all the white, and now I can just delete it. And that's super. But obviously if she was wearing white pants, I would have deleted her legs. So sometimes that doesn't work. So if you feel really passionate about this person and you really need it in your rendering, you might have to take the time to use this polygonal lasso tool and zoom in. So zooming is like this whole new game. You know, you've experienced it with Illustrator. It's exactly the same. You can either hold Alt down and use your scroll button, or if you're like me and you have like a magic mouse, you have to use Control plus and minus. So you would zoom way, way in and then outline your chick, your man. Say I'm gonna be like, this is not, this jacket arm thing is not working for me. Let's delete that. So that might be something that you have to do. Control Z. Yeah. All right. So now I want to pop her over into my rendering. I am on the layer. Control A. That picks only the thing on this layer that is capturing all that information. And then hit Control C, which is copy, and then Control V. Where'd you go? Indeed. So you can just pull her back up. And there she is. She's ready to go to work. Good job. Let's put some more people in. Who else is ready to go to work?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. This is probably the most fun part, by the way. So yes. And they all have different personalities. Yes. So yeah, so Shutterstock, you want to avoid things like that. Often I will just trace them myself from an image. Oh, this one's on a green screen. Okay. That's again Shutterstock, but you can just probably copy this image as a low res thing and it will still be fine. Control new, enter, Control V, magic wand, boop. If I hit delete now, there's still like a little green in here. You can just go ahead, grab that, delete. Okay. Control A, Control C, Control V. All right. This is a tough one, but let's say that's it. So, do they look like they're scaled correctly? Huh? Like that? Okay. So like this is a tough thing. Often you'll be like doing this very late at night. And you'll start putting people in and you're not trained to see where people go. And all the architects that you will be presenting to in your final are. They're trained and they know and they can spot a misscaled person a million miles away. So your trick is to use a perspectival line. So in essence, any person should have their eyes at the same plane as any other person. That doesn't mean to say that you can't mess this up at the very beginning and sort of scale this person incorrectly, right? It probably, like, let's say this person is walking out of the building. She's probably too big anyways. And that meant that this person is also too big. But if she is at this level, being a real big distraction because she's in the middle of my pretty picture, looking at the camera, awkward. You will then see that it will always be on the verge of correct. Let's go grab something. Oh, yes, a selfie. Yes. Copy, image. Photoshop, Control New, Enter V. Magic wand, select, delete. So you can start to see how I just deleted her whole bag situation because it was interfering with the green screen. You know, this might be a moment when you have to go in and manually select something, but we don't care about that. Hopefully this bag gets cut. So Control A, Control C, over to the test rendering, Control V. So if I want her to be really giant and in the front taking a selfie, my sort of trick will be to line it up with something I know that is correct, and then that should be correct. Of course, that doesn't apply to someone that's standing on the roof. I'm talking about only at one ground plane. She would clearly be smaller. Master. All right, so same process. You will want to add plants, let's say palm trees, white background. Great. Copy image. Control New, Enter, Control V. Magically select all this. Again, we don't want this Pixar's thing, so we can just use this rectangle marquee. Grab that, delete it. Control A, Control C. Test render, Control V. Transform. I think these will be pretty low quality, but whatever. Yes, yes. It's just growing right there. Perfect. And these seem pretty short for palm trees. Sure. If you have grass, you can grab grass. Let me just see if they even have this. I don't think so. But yeah, so if you have grass, you can just go grab grass. Grass texture, maybe. You know, grab something that's grassy. Things that have a little bit of dead in it are typically what you want, and you want it to not be zoomed in. So something with like a diverse color range and a little zoomed out. Control V. Zoom out. Use your transform tool, which is Control T. When you hit Control T, you're going to want to right click. So these are all the ways that you can transform something. You can rotate it, you can flip it horizontal, you can flip it vertical. Almost always for grass, I use the distort tool. So this lets you grab any corner edge and just move it freely. And that is helpful because you can then sort of align it with stuff that's in your drawing. So let's say we're gonna have this like grassy sidewalk area. I can sort of just move this around. Until it looks like what I want it to. And then the grass will go under the tree. So, you know, you start to see things like this white. It's not great. Oh, wrong one. You could go around and fix it manually. I would probably go get a different thing, like her green around her side. That's not great either. So this is where going around and maybe using very specific select tools come into play. You can zoom in and then just sort of grab more area. Very fun, super relaxing. Takes time. And like, be more specific about that. What? What? Yes, so you just can go select color range. So here you could go select color range. This is the white because I've already selected it. Hit OK and delete, but you'll still have issues with this because it does feather. So this is at feather 0, but it's still not selecting all the white. I already know that. I can tell by painting this background black. So select color range. I'm gonna go over here, grab this, all this white, right? You can adjust the fuzziness. So this is sort of simulating what it will select. Hit OK, delete. It's asking if you want it to be content aware. So this is trying to do you a favor. Oh, never mind. Sorry, I was on the wrong layer. Delete. There you go. So yeah, that's much better, but it's still not perfect. So it's up to you to sort of make that decision. So between this is a history toolbar, so you can sort of go back between that and that. You know, that's much better, but it still might not be enough sometimes. Okay, so my last trick is lens flare. What's a lens flare? Huh? Yes, so when light hits the camera lens, it creates a flare, and it's like made famous by so in movies, people are always doing things like this. It's like very, oh yeah, it was in the Star Trek movie. I saw the film editor. The director's like holding a flashlight and shining it into the camera to create flares. So some people find them cheesy. I don't. I love them. So yeah, these are all, yeah, Star Trek. Yeah, they really embrace this. This is a lens flare. So it's reflecting a light, it's capturing a light, and then it's flaring it. And it's really all about sort of acknowledging that this is a picture. What? So you can add the sun. You can also have it reflect off glass. And if you don't have those two things, well, then you can just go for whatever. But that is under filter. So the first rule with lens flare is your flaring will only impact the layer that you're on. So let's try this on layer 1, which is my building. Also, you're gonna be better than me and like label your stuff, right? Layer 6 being called layer 6 could be called palm trees. You can just double click. All right, layer 1 though. Clicked on layer 1, filter, render, lens flare. This is simulating what it will do. If you move the flare around, the flare, the hotspot is typically what it's reflecting off of. And you see these little bubbles here. That's like the flare back into the lens. There are different lens lengths and styles if, if that's your preference. But usually I just go with this one. I put it on something flaring, hit OK. All right, maybe that's a little too dramatic, but you see what I'm getting at. Some people hate it. You'd have to like totally purely brace yourself for people not liking it. So this is the basics to photoshopping and adding stuff into your rendering. I do encourage you to go look at sort of I don't know if my Pinterest is in Pinterest. Whatever. You'll see like a whole range. No, you will not get to hyper realistic renderings. Again, that's not like the point. But you can sort of look at the way other people are rendering things and get some inspiration. You can also do night renderings, but we are not going to cover that until the end of the semester.